Legislation establishes a new Class 6 felony. We do have a budget amendment in at Finance. Offense for any parent, guardian, or other person responsible for child care of the child under the age of 18 whose willful act of omission interferes with the child's contact and relationship with the other parent, guardian, or other person responsible for the care of such child, including unreasonably denying the other parent, guardian, or other person responsibility of care of such child access or visitation with such child. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I've got folks to speak on this, but I'm going to summarize it real quick.
Mr. Chair, if I can understand, if I can ask a question.
Yes, Senator Dees.
If I'm a custodial parent and I'm under an order, and the other parent, non-custodial parent, has visitation rights, and I deny that parent visitation rights, or I talk badly about that parent, aren't I already subject to contempt of court?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure about that. I'd have to check with one of the attorneys, but I do know that there are multiple cases of this throughout the Commonwealth, and we put in the bill for one of our folks who are here to testify today. We've been approached by over 100 other individuals on this situation. And there's been a lot, and every single individual I talk to has the same thing. They've run up tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to defend themselves and get access back to the child. With that, I'd like to have our first individual who's going to testify on this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Darla Greece, and this is my son, Brady Greece. Thank you for having us here, and thank you, Senator Doucette, for making this possible. In order to protect my son's privacy today, I'll only skim the surface of explaining the details of our situation, which is thankfully now over. The scars, however, still remain. I did prepare a more detailed statement, though, and I do have copies to leave with you today. When my son was 8 years old, an individual that I once had a long-term relationship with began to alienate him from me. My son's behavior towards me began to change, and changed drastically. He began telling me that he hated me and that he never loved me. He started using language that 8-year-olds wouldn't use, acting out in school, and developing physical ailments. He confessed that he had no recall of any good memories between he and I. I have months' worth of medical records that support these things and more. I learned that this process of manipulating children is called parental alienation. Until experiencing it firsthand, I had never heard of such a thing. It destroys the crucial parent-child relationship, and sometimes that relationship never recovers. Kids grow into adults hating one of their parents because of another adult's anger or resentment. Some of these kids are being coached to say terrible things. Fathers are coaching their kids to say mommy uses drugs. Mothers are coaching kids to say that their dads are doing inappropriate things to them. One parent is made to look terrible while the other looks like the hero. It's a very cruel and systematic act that needs to be understood, recognized, and stopped. Shortly before I left that relationship, I discovered that my son's alienator was secretly recording me on an iPhone. His alienator began prompting severe arguments between us by speaking poorly of my deceased twin sister and my family members. Those arguments would soon become ammunition to seek custody of my son. It was a very deliberate, well thought out, and methodical plan, and a plan that for a while was successful and wreaked havoc on my relationship with my son. My angry ex sued for custody of my son, and before I knew it, I was fighting to keep my own child. As litigation persisted, so did his hatred towards me, and it was devastating. I didn't know why he was saying the things that he was saying, and for the life of me, I couldn't understand where his hatred was coming from. It was deep-rooted and broke my heart in a way that I can't even know how to express. During the initial court proceedings, the judge and guardian ad litem didn't believe my concerns of alienation. They instead sided with my son's alienator and gave the abuse a green light. That abuse continued for months that seemed like years. I was mocked and scolded time and time over, both inside the courtroom and in reports. I was sentenced to serve jail time, which thankfully a circuit court judge overturned. All along, I was still trying to convince my son that he was safe to be with me and free to start loving me again. By the grace of God, as my son grew older, he began explaining to a therapist and to the guardian ad litem how he was manipulated, and finally the truth was revealed. The recordings that portrayed me in an unfavorable light were being played for him. He was being told that I did illegal things. He explained that he was being coached to say certain things. By the time litigation ended, I had paid my attorney over $110,000, and I still owe him over $105,000. A 2-year litigation period has destroyed our financial future. Brady's college, my retirement, every single aspect of it. To say that our lives have been changed forever is a profound understatement. We'll struggle now for the rest of our lives because of one person's cruel attempt at taking the person that matters the most to me, my child. It's my opinion that trying to destroy a patient's relationship with their child is nothing short of heinous and should be punishable by law both civilly and criminally. Sadly, this is happening across the country, and I hope that today our great Commonwealth takes the lead in educating our judges and guardian ad litems on how to recognize what's real and what's being fabricated, because time is of the essence. Young children who are being coached are not going to say that they're being coached. It's brainwashing them to believe that a reality doesn't exist. I can't tell you how many nights I spent on my knees praying to God for answers as to why we were going through such a nightmare. But today, as we stand in front of you, that question is finally answered. Thank you for listening, and thank you for welcoming both Brady and me here today. It's a day that we'll never forget.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, are there other speakers? We're way over time, so just briefly state who you are and what your position is on the bill. And
My name is Zachariah Hopper. I'm a voice for my daughter Angelica and for hundreds and if not thousands of parents and children in the same situation. I'm going to make this brief, but my story is very intense. My daughter, her life was taken as a result of parental alienation. It doesn't get much more serious than that. We not only do we have a right to our children, but our children have a right to us. This has been established in every authority of the land. And there is no remedy that's realistic. You mentioned contempt. That is not realistic. That does not happen. That is technically on the books. It does not
it
happen.
happens all the time in the courts where I practice.
Yeah, on maybe the third or fourth time that it happens, and it's not realistic. It is not a realistic remedy. I know hundreds, if not thousands, of parents that I advocate with that have expressed the same thing. I'm just going to touch on a couple things here that I feel like you need to know.
As I said, we're way over time.
I know,
so
I understand
please
that.
be brief.
Please. My daughter's life was very important, and I'm on my way to another hearing in the murder trial for my daughter right now after this. So if I could just borrow your time for just a second. This is, like I said, she expressed it very well, so I'm not going to go into the details of that. This is child abuse, and it is domestic violence. The man who was allowed to be around my children during this alienation had a severe criminal record, including rape, kidnapping, assaults, robberies, burglaries, and much more, and was allowed to be around my children. Family court did not do anything about the denial of contact. I had 50-50 custody of all 3 of my girls at this time, and I had that for 5 years prior to him moving in, prior to the alienation. Alienation is an insidious practice, and it recruits dangerous people into the practice, and this needs to stop because the remedy is not working. It needs to be a crime because it is child abuse and it is domestic violence. Thank you. And it cost me, it cost my child's life, and I want you to remember that. Her name is Angelica Marie Hoffer. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next. 404 minutes. 12
Hi,
seconds.
I'm Kim Ramsey with
Sounds
Family
exciting.
Law Coalition, and we do oppose this bill. As stated by some of the senators, we believe that there is already legislation that covers this, and these are terrible, terrible cases. We don't deny that, but they are a case-by-case basis where perhaps there was not a good outcome in the case, but we don't think the legislation needs to be changed.
Okay. Time expired away.
Good morning, Jonathan Iglesias with the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance. We oppose this bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Valerie L'Herrou from Virginia Poverty Law Center. We also support this bill. It would have a deleterious effect on families where
Support or
domestic
oppose?
violence is involved in the custody dispute. And Senator Deeds is exactly right as far as the contempt. I think we've all seen that. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we oppose the bill. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Anybody else opposing the bill? Yeah, coming up.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Doucette, Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys, and I'm not unsympathetic. I've gone through this particular situation myself, but this bill is so much broader than the examples that have been brought up. This is any interference, not even court-ordered visitation. This is any interference with visitation. I went through it and survived it fine. I mean, you know, it was a situation where my ex was saying, you know, Dad wants to put me in jail, and I didn't. I did not go through the contempt process. This is now going to be Dad wants to put me in prison. This is going to weaponize every single contentious divorce and every past divorce where the children are under the age of 18, and for that reason, we oppose this bill.
Okay, anybody else like to speak? I want to wrap it up, Senator Doucette?
Mr. Chair, oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. Where is that? Senator Peterson?
Well, I don't know if the sponsor had a last word or.
No?
I think that when parental alienation costs our children's lives, that we need to take a hard stand on it. And I think we truly do need to do something to make a difference.
Okay, is there a
Mr.
motion?
Chair, I have a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to move to PBI the bill, and I respect the patron. I thank his witnesses for coming to testify about their own personal circumstances. I have a concern about criminalizing our domestic relations laws, which are already emotional enough, and especially concerned about trying to solve every social problem with a Class 6 felony for people that we think are acting badly. I recognize the current system does have flaws. It's not perfect, but charging people with Class 6 felonies for what are now rules to show cause is not the solution. So I move to PBI.
It's been moved and seconded to PBI the bill. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, no.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. We also have,
The bill's been PBI 15-0. Okay. That PBI, by the way, means passed by indefinitely, in case anybody didn't understand. Okay.
Senate Bill 42, which this is aggravated sexual battery. You've heard this already once.